Welcome, everyone, to the NYC Workforce Drop. My name is Greg Morris. I'm the CEO of the New York City Employment and Training Coalition. I am at the beautiful Manhattan Neighborhood Network studio for our podcast. This has been a remarkable season. Anyone who has listened, anyone who has shared with someone else that they should listen, anyone who said to me, I promise you at some point I'm going to listen, I just want to say thank you because it's meant a lot to us in this effort to do some storytelling, to talk about what's going on in the city and in the state. And also, I think just to be present in a conversation about where our city is and where it's headed. A couple things for you before we get into this with our controller, Mark Levine, here today to talk about workforce challenges, governing for the next economy. He's going to dig in on AI as well in a number of different ways as he sort of shares his journey in public office, starting from being a bilingual math and science teacher in South Bronx and passing through the neighborhood trust and the federal credit union and moving from that place into the city council and the borough president's office and now as controller. And I just, before we get into that, I just want to say a couple things. First off, I walked into my favorite pre-pod coffee shop right down the block, Cafe Vento, and the gentleman who runs that shop was wearing NYC ETC swag, the baseball shirts that we gave. I gave him one. He was wearing it today, proudly. That was thrilling. I love his chocolate croissant and his Americano. I also just want to say this. Last week was a really interesting one. We were at the New York City Council talking about our affordable city agenda, how it is that by going green, we can do better for New York. And we had a tremendous turnout of workforce development providers telling that story. Shout out to Chair Maloney, Chair Wan for hosting that joint oversight hearing of the Green Economy Action Plan. We were thrilled to stand together to talk about how our city has to go green for not just its sustainability, but for its economic health. I just want to say thanks for everybody who listened in. If you haven't read the report, you haven't seen the hearing, please drop in on that. I have to give a shout out to the Bed-Stuy Youth Leadership Council. Last week, I got to hang out in Bed-Stuy with a group of young people who spent 2 months thinking about the future of New York City. And what were they worried about? Mental health. They were worried about food access. They were worried about housing. They were worried about public safety. They were worried about all the things that we know are the most difference-making in people's lives and things that we tried to talk about during the course of this podcast. I'm going to get them I'm going to get the Bed-Stuy Youth Leadership Council on the podcast because, in all honesty, they're the ones who are going to lead us to the next steps and the next where we are going as a city. But the last thing I'll just say is, before we get to the controller, last week, a very dear relative of mine passed. Helena Every, she was known generously and thoughtfully as my Aunt Penny, passed. And I just want to reference her for a second because she was a nurse in Schenectady, New York, where I grew up, for about 50 years. Went to nursing school, worked at St. Clair's Hospital, and was thought of, and I wrote about this in LinkedIn and other places, about who she was. She was tough as a nurse. She was serious as a nurse. She worked to train others as a nurse. The people who were trained by her, including my mom, would say she was the best that there was. And it's because she could see things before they happened. And that's what you want from the nurse. I know right now that my aunt is enjoying her time and her comfort in her garden up above, with her parents and other relatives, and they are talking and celebrating and the next part of the journey of life. But I guess I just wanted to mention her because when I think about workforce development, when I think about jobs and job training, when I think about what it is that we do and how it is that we do it, I think of my aunt. And I think of her because of the time she put in trying to take care of people in Schenectady, where I grew up, but also something I learned about her at her funeral. And that was, she was someone who specifically stayed after her shift to be with those patients who didn't have family. She was someone who was close to folks who didn't have anyone else to rely on when they were scared and when they were hurting and when they were afraid in the hospital. And I just want to make a note to everybody who's listening today, anybody who's listened to the NYC Workforce Drop, you're not alone. And what we go through together. That's what makes our city great. This podcast features Mark Levine, the Comptroller for the City of New York. He's going to talk about everything he is trying to do to make our city great. Know that you have a role in that. If you're not living it, you're not working it, get to it, because that's what we're all meant to do and to be. Thank you. I am very excited to do this podcast, NYC Workforce Drop. This is like the season closer right here. We're wrapping up season 1, and we have a really amazing guest. As I've said, Mark Levine is with us. The Comptroller's here. I'm going to tell you, in all honesty, you're the second guest in the course of all these podcasts that included security, by the way.
Oh, don't hold it against me.
The security is here as well. We love that. Shout out to the security folks. Listen, you have a hugely important job. The fact that you made time for this, much appreciated.
Well, first, Greg, congrats on the success of this podcast.
Oh, listen to this. Here it is.
I'm really thrilled to close out season 1. I know there'll be many, many more great seasons ahead. And more importantly, thank you for what you've done over the last 20 plus years to help New Yorkers connect to careers. Hard to think of something more important than that. More challenging and important than ever right now. And to have you leading on behalf of the citywide network is really, really wonderful. I'm grateful for your leadership.
Thank you for saying so. Much appreciated. But let's put it out there. Your history as a public servant, your experience, your expertise, I think really extraordinary.
Thank you,
and I'm going to rewind it back to you were a teacher, bilingual math and science?
Yes.
Do me a favor. Just talk to me. Who was the Mark Levine of teaching bilingual
My
math and
goodness.
science?
I was just out of college.
Just out of college.
I was 22 and looked about 15. And I'd studied physics undergrad.
Oh.
I did not want to spend my life in the lab. I realized that.
Yeah.
But I still loved physics. I loved science. I still do today.
Yeah.
And I felt that teaching was a way to share that love with a younger generation and also be out there in the world and hopefully do some good. And I landed in a school in District 7 in the early 90s, South Bronx, junior high school 149. Tough time for the South Bronx and tough time for the school, but just loved my kids, was so inspired by them, and have been inspired by many of the careers they've had since. Been lucky to be in touch with a couple of them.
That's great.
And teaching was a tough job. It also, in many ways, changed my life and kind of set me on to a career of community work. Led me ultimately to start a nonprofit to help deal with some of the challenges I saw in the neighborhood and the families that I saw there. And indirectly even led me into running for office because I was just so frustrated with how the schools were run at the time. It's the early 90s, a lot of corruption, really tough era for what was then called the Board of Ed. And that frustration ultimately is one of the 2 or 3 major factors that led me to run for city council when I first did years ago.
And first off, let me just say, credit to you, nothing but love and appreciation for educators. I don't know a teacher who doesn't always feel that sense of what it's like to be in the classroom for the first time, what it meant when folks talk about the students they knew and that they continue to know, even if they've taken other paths from that point. Shout out to every educator working as hard as they do in New York City, especially in the South Bronx. And by the way, junior high, as someone who's had some history working in schools, never as a teacher, but junior high was always to me, I work with high school, I work with out of school, out of work, I work with younger ones. Junior high is rough. And I mean that with love and respect because they are like evolving as humans a little differently than any other generation, perhaps.
It is a very tough age, and elementary and high school teachers will fight me on this. It is the toughest place to be a teacher.
Right.
Wonderful in many ways because you can really shape the future trajectory of a young person, and I'd like to think they're young people who took an interest in math or science or more technical careers because at this critical time when they were 13 or 14 that they got turned on to it. But it's tough, and it was a tough time in my school. We had probably 35, 36 kids per classroom, and a very under-resourced school, no school nurse, for example. So I will, for the rest of my life, have such respect for the work of being a teacher because it is just so tough. In some ways, tougher than the job I have now. I have a very intense job now. But in many ways, being a teacher was even harder. And so to any teachers who are listening out there, thank you. I will have undying respect and gratitude for the work you do.
So appreciated. And I am sort of fascinated about this journey. When is by the way, you grew up Chicago?
Well, I was born in Chicago, but I left very young. I really grew up in Maryland.
Maryland, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, how'd you find your way to New York City? So you find your way to the South Bronx here as a teacher, but how did that happen for you?
Great question. I'd been studying undergrad in Philadelphia, great little school, liberal arts college called Haverford College, which I just loved.
Yep.
Yeah. And I applied to the early days of a program called Teach for America.
Oh,
which was a way to get into teaching very quick without the usual bureaucratic challenges. And it was the early days of the program. They were in only maybe like 6 cities. And I put New York as my first choice and landed here, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me.
That's amazing. That's amazing. What moment is it in your life when you turn to the people around you and say, I've decided to run for office?
New York City had a term limits law take effect in 2001.
That's right.
And it is the first time that we had a real turnover in local government. It used to be that people were in the same seat for 20 or 30 years. That was quite common. And there I was, at that point, leading a nonprofit in Washington Heights, a community credit union that I formed in part to deal with the challenges I saw among the kids in my school. Families who just had no access to the financial system and no bank account, no way to get a loan other than pawn shops and loan sharks. And so we started what's called Neighborhood Trust Federal Credit Union uptown. And I felt really frustrated that the city government really didn't care about community economic development or the kind of economic empowerment that we had a mission on achieving. And I talked to you about my frustration as a teacher. And friends of mine said, stop complaining about it, Mark, and get into the arena and do something about it. So as a complete novice, I ran for city council way back in 2001. I'd never even been to a Democratic club meeting prior to that. So huge learning curve, intense race. That ended up being 9/11. People forget that 9/11 2001 was the primary day in New York City. And so the election was called off by about 11 a.m. So brutal to go through that as a New Yorker and as a human being, but also to have a campaign that we had to call off and then put back together 2 weeks later. It was a 10-way race. I came in second, and I was devastated, Greg. I was very young. I was like 31 or whatever. And
it's heartbreaking. I've never known anybody who didn't run for office and not get the seat they were seeking who isn't just heartbroken.
Yeah, you put yourself out there. Your reputation's on the line.
It's got to be agonizing.
You push your life to the breaking point.
Yep.
But then I'll tell you, Greg, something weird happened. My phone started ringing the next day with people saying congratulations, which was very jarring. I didn't get what was happening. And ultimately I understood. They said, look, you're a young person. You're new. You ran a great race. You got a lot of votes. You got a lot of endorsements. You got a future in this business if you want a kid. And I came to understand that you can run and lose and still push your career forward. I think that applies in many arenas, not just campaigns. And ultimately, it did give me a base to build on. And actually ran once more and lost in 2010 for state senate, but finally broke through in 2013 and became a council member uptown. And boy, am I glad I stuck with it, because it's just been an incredibly exciting ride in the now 13 or so years since.
I have to believe, like I said, the drive that it takes to go through the campaigning process, I've had the ability to observe some of this from a distance. I've never been in a campaign myself, but I certainly have observed folks, have supported folks, and been present along some of these journeys. To me, it is both there's the part of it that is about the earnest sort of desire to help people, right?
Yep.
Connecting with someone has to say, or someone has to think you're the one who can solve a problem. And I always, in my observation of that, I always think to myself, that is both very unique, right? Because everyone's got opinions.
Yeah.
There's something a little bit more that it takes to be like, I'm the one who's going to fix it. But also people have to buy into you.
Yeah.
Were there people that you had maybe that took you under their wing a little bit to support you as you went through this journey?
Oh, for sure. I mean, first let me say this business attracts all manner of characters, including people
let's
who are in it for the right reasons and people who are in it for the wrong reasons, right?
100%.
And people are in it first and foremost to make a change and to make lives better for their community. And people are in it for more narcissistic reasons. I just want to be honest that, and people are somewhere on that spectrum.
That's right. Thinking you can get things done can mean a lot of different things. That's right.
Yeah, it's true. And you know, it's unfortunate that sometimes people who are in it for the wrong reasons rise quickly to the top. You know, in a better world that wouldn't be the case, but you know, I'm sorry to say it's more complicated than that out there. I got a pretty big slap in the face when I was making my rounds as a novice candidate from talking to people. I came in energetic with my ideas for how to change city government and how to change my neighborhood. I was running in Uptown Manhattan, Washington Heights, West Harlem. People mostly just wanted to know whether I could win. And it was somewhat disheartening, but I think it is still today the nature of politics that people want to bet on viable candidates.
They want a winning horse,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. So I think the best campaigns are ones that have an inspiring message and also make a really strong case for viability. And we try and do both of that in every race. But look, I was blessed by many people who had been in the business who took me under their wing and taught me so much. One I'll mention is Denny Farrell, who was an assembly member for many years. Really an important figure in New York City history. He was one of the first viable people of color to run for mayor, ran for mayor of New York City back in the 80s, and really helped pave the way for the David Dinkins campaign later. But he was an assembly member in Uptown Manhattan, rose very high in state government, became chair of the Ways and Means for the assembly. Profoundly decent person who never lost that decency, despite rising very high in politics. And despite having encountered a lot of racism as he was coming up in the 70s and 80s and beyond. And you know, I started out my career as an insurgent myself, running against the establishment, and he was the establishment. But eventually, he really took me under his wing and taught me a lot. And he passed away, maybe about a decade ago at this point. But I miss him very much.
You know, I'm curious about this sort of being present in the community. You are a Washington Heights guy. Maria Lizardo, by the way, sends her well wishes. Shout out to Maria, the best, the executive director of NIMIC. She literally texted me today and said, make him tell you about his love for the Heights.
Oh, wow.
And I bring that up partially because I'm guessing that as you were navigating the neighborhood, as you're trying to seek out constituents and votes and community, and I want to go back to the neighborhood trust. I want to go back to that because that's key. Yeah. But I just have to believe a certain amount of trust had to be cultivated, right? To be for I think probably the neighborhood to believe in you.
Sure. Look, I moved to 185th Street and Pinehurst Avenue in 1995. And began immediately working to organize this nonprofit, cooperatively owned financial institution that by definition requires trust. You're asking people to put their life savings.
The trust on the stamp of it. I mean, that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And look, I had an amazing co-founder someone who's a brother to me today and still very close, Luis de los Santos. And he and I spent months and months and months speaking in the basements of buildings to tenants associations and speaking to church groups and going to community board meetings. I happen to speak Spanish, as you know, because of my experience as a bilingual teacher. So a lot is in Spanish in a largely immigrant community. And we built a really, really good network of trusted leaders in the neighborhood. People like Maria Lizardo. This was a little before her time, but dozens and dozens of people who came up through the neighborhood, Dominican leaders and others, African-American leaders, and built a really good leadership structure of people who were deeply rooted in the district. And we were aided by the fact that there's a very strong cooperative movement in the Dominican Republic, in the Caribbean, of cooperative financial institutions. And so people know Cooperativa de Ahorro y Préstamo. This is like a well-known concept, probably more than an American-born person. And so we tapped into that. And somehow, I was in my 20s. Luis was like 3 or 4 years older. We got a charter from the federal government to become an insured, federally regulated financial institution. It's mind-blowing how we pulled that off. And Chase Manhattan Bank was closing branches at that era, and they gave us a branch they had closed on Fort Washington Avenue and 179th that had been empty for about 4 years. And we opened to the world in March of 1997, and it grew like gangbusters, Greg. We pretty soon grew to thousands of members, people who didn't have bank accounts, who otherwise might have literally had their money in cash in a shoebox at home.
Or they're going to check cashing places and things like that.
Totally. Paying insane fees, dealing with check cashing stores, loan sharks, in Spanish known as prestamistas, insane interest, 5% a week, threat of violence if you don't repay. It's totally a barrier to advancement, to starting a business, to become an owner of your own home, to pay for college. And we started making loans in the neighborhood. And I'm so proud that this institution is still going strong today. I have had no formal role there for many years. I'm just a proud cheerleader, a proud parent. But there's an amazing team in place there. Neighborhood Trust Federal Credit Union. It moved a few blocks away. Eventually, it's on 165th and St. Nick. It's made, Greg, over $100 million of small loans. Very small loans, $5,000 probably on average, helping people buy a home computer, start a small business, 98% repayment rate.
Amazing.
Proving that when you give people an opportunity, they will seize it, they will run with it. That's what's happened. So, it was a defining experience for me, something I'm incredibly proud of, and a base that ultimately allowed me to run for city council, in a neighborhood that's, I'm a white Jewish guy. I do speak Spanish, but I was running in a neighborhood that was overwhelmingly Latino and African American. But that experience of having built something in the neighborhood with local partners is what made it possible for me to run for office and ultimately win.
Two things. First off, what I appreciate about you is that I think you are someone who has experienced what it takes to build an infrastructure or to build something. And that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of people. But I'm saying if you take something from scratch that the community can benefit from, presumably the benefit saying they can benefit from this is going to, you build the trust, and then you actually have to make the thing. Well, I appreciate about you that you have some sense and experience of what that is and what that looks like. And I'm guessing that has a lot of influence on your sort of thinking today as comptroller, because you're someone who has talked about how hard it is sometimes for us to build things or put things in place that can actually result in results. And I just want to sort of acknowledge that first. And second, I just have to believe, tell me if I'm wrong, when those doors open, you must have been both experiencing a great deal of joy and enthusiasm and also a sheer sense of terror. But it had to be panic.
Yeah.
Because these are people's lives. And what you're trying to do and make connections, it had to feel overwhelming.
Look, first of all, implementation is brutal.
Yeah.
Implementation will eat you alive.
Yes.
And having a vision is important, and I salute the visionaries out there. But in the real world, building an organization is a very messy process. And starting a nonprofit is, in a lot of ways, the hardest thing that I've ever done. And perhaps the hardest thing I'll ever do. but also exhilarating, as you said, sort of the joy of creation. I remember at the time feeling like I understood why people go into sculpture and then stay up all night creating their sculpture, because just the joy and the exhilaration of seeing something that you've dreamed coming together before your eyes. But but we put ourselves out there. We put a lot of money into renovating a branch. No different than someone who opens a bodega or a small business or a theater, and they feel their reputation's on the line. It's not just their money, but a lot of other people's money is on the line. This was a nonprofit, so it wasn't like I had personal investments exactly, but I'd gotten a lot of people to contribute philanthropically, individual donors, foundations, companies which had made deposits into the credit union at zero interest as a way to support us. And, it could have crashed. And at a few moments, it was a little bit perilous. I'm not going to lie. But we were pumped up by just incredible demand in the community. And there's a UPS commercial from a few years ago where it's this internet company that launches and everyone's watching the dashboard and they get 5 customers and they all cheer. Then they get 25 and then they cheer even louder. Then they get 2,000 and they get a little bit nervous. Then they get 10,000 and they start to get worried. And,
oh no.
We pretty soon had a problem of like intense growth and how to manage it, which is a good problem to have. And then we hit 9/11, man. I was running a nonprofit when and running for office, and our borrowers were the people who lost their jobs. Right? People forget about all the jobs that were lost after 9/11, but tourism died. Right? So if you were driving a shuttle van to the airport,
that's right.
Right? You no longer had an income.
That's right.
Those were our borrowers, and many of them stopped paying their loans. We understand why, but of course that was a potentially existential crisis for the credit union, which also saw its philanthropic support dry up because the economy took a hit. We came through it, and shout out to the team that came in to succeed me, led by the woman who's still running it today, Justine Zickin, and they've kept it going and growing, and it's bigger and broader than I could have imagined today. But shout out to everyone who's had a vision for starting a nonprofit, a business, any kind of organization. You guys are the creators and the visionaries who combine those talents with the ability to implement. And you're just very, very important to this society. Keep at it. I salute you all the way.
We spend time on this podcast talking about challenge. We talk sometimes about failure. Woven into the narrative, any leader I've talked to over the course of these 40-plus podcasts has been the pandemic and what that has meant. I don't know how much we've talked about the world trade. I'm not sure how much we've talked about 9/11. I'm curious, as you look back on it, you've reflected on the organization you're running and how you're trying to navigate that. But as you just think back to that, you're running trying to figure out your campaign during that time period. But I'm just wondering, as you look back on it, what comes to mind when you think about that?
There were horrors.
Many,
which you know.
Things. Yeah.
And the day of the attack, we thought there were 50,000 people would have been murdered.
Yeah.
Right? You're thinking how many people are in those towers. It just turned out because of the exact timing in the workday.
That's right.
We had fewer, but it was pretty clear that everyone was going to know someone who had been killed.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Even in a city as big as New York, when 3,000 people are murdered, it touches us all. And certainly I experienced that. There was beauty in that moment, too, as crazy it is to say, about the way the city came together. And honestly, Greg, I've been thinking back to that a lot because the feeling the city had after the Knicks victory was the first time I felt a similar unity.
Yes.
Like, after 9/11, on the subway, you look at the person across from you, and we knew what we were both thinking about, and we probably talked about it, and we felt we were together in that.
That's right.
And
That's right.
Same thing with the Knicks.
Yes.
Knicks in 5, baby, and you could say that to anyone on the street. Right. And so finally we had a bonding that was about something beautiful and not something horrific.
Something devastating.
Yeah, but also I'll say, relevant to I know what we're going to talk about AI, like people question whether cities had a future. Many people said, why would you ever want to work in a tall or live in a tall building again?
Yeah, that's right. That's
Because
right.
you're a target.
That's right.
And that people said, well, if there's no tall buildings, there's no cities. And New York City has more tall buildings than anywhere. People seriously question the future of cities. And therefore, that had major economic repercussions. But, damn, we're resilient. And we came back. And, in some ways, the wounds never heal. We later learned that there were people down there who were breathing the air.
Yeah,
A lot of workers, first responders, firefighters, and others who didn't get sick until years later, and some are still now dealing with those sicknesses. So, it would be wrong to say that we've ever totally healed that wound, but came back as a city.
Yeah.
And what a lesson about the fact that New York's been going for 4 centuries. It takes a lot to knock us off track. And I'm thinking about that today when we confront AI about the same questions about whether the city will have a future and how resilient it will be. And it's part of the reason why I'm optimistic.
I appreciate you sharing that. And I'll just note that, my lasting remembrance of that time period, and there are many, obviously, but it was all of the National Guard blocking Lower Manhattan.
Yeah.
It's something very, in a city where you always feel like there's a lot of different neighborhoods, there's a lot of different things, but you always feel like you have a sense of, I would say freedom, but you can move if you've got the resource. And then see the city blocked off in some way, it threw off what New York was. Yeah. And then the other lasting image, I think, will be just it was probably Union Square where all the signs were up, people missing. And that there's something about that will never quite shake. That said, in terms of, to your point, there's the gift and the curse. The curse of being in a space where awful things can happen. The gift is perhaps you learn something from that and you find your footing.
Yeah.
The pandemic is another way of thinking about this. And I want to give you as deep of a shout out as I can.
Thank you.
Specific to the pandemic period, because I distinctly remember leading an organization at that time in the nonprofit space, Stanley Isaac's Neighborhood Center. It was you were the one that I was looking to for any data as to how the city was doing and where things were working and where they weren't. I distinctly remember that because in that moment where we were all sort of searching for how to get through the day in a city that had been devastated in many ways, touched by the pandemic in a variety of different ways, the first iteration of that, I just remember thinking you were the one who was sort of communicating what we needed to know about trying to keep each other safe. And you were doing it in a way that I didn't think other people were. And I appreciate that. And I've never gotten to say to you, thank you. And I don't know if this relates to your, hey, you're a bilingual math and science teacher in your lifetime. You were, as part of the city council, you were part of the health committee. You've had your hands on lots of things. But I just remember that saying like, oh, you were the one that was sort of saying, here's what you guys need to look out for. Here's what you need to be mindful of.
Oh, thank you for saying that. What a horrible time that was. Hard to believe we actually went through that.
It is hard to believe we actually went through that, isn't it?
It's like something out of a disaster movie.
Completely.
I mean, we lost well over 45,000 friends and neighbors and family members in New York City. Which just
everyone touched, everyone impacted.
That number I thought we were going to lose on 9/11 that thank God didn't happen, we actually lost that.
That's right.
In the pandemic. And I became health chair in 2018, and
who knew? Yeah.
The staff sat me down, actually. You get a staff in every committee. And the council said, Mr. Chair, you got a pretty chill committee. The biggest disaster you'll face will be like an outbreak of Legionnaire's disease.
Oh, we got to clean something up. We got to work it out. Yeah, no.
Meanwhile, 12 months later, we had a global pandemic. But, it was very important that I had that period of about a year as health chair to begin to build relationships within public health institutions in New York, within the health department, within hospitals, et cetera. And boy, I really drew on my background in science. I didn't study biology, but I was able to talk to epidemiologists, and I certainly understood exponential growth because of my background. And I just decided, in those first days around March 1st of 2020 that I realized I had a platform, and I was going to use it to push out the wisdom of the people who knew more than me, the epidemiologists, the frontline nurses, the docs and ERs,
Yep.
The public health soldiers who are out there. And I really, honestly, my most important role was channeling their wisdom. And I had a way of getting it out that they didn't. And I decided I was going to throw political caution to the wind and decided nothing else mattered more. And I still think that there's a hunger for that kind of communication. Yeah. Perhaps even more today, as people just don't know what they can trust and who they can trust.
That's right.
And I think it's very relevant to my current job. I think in part the job of comptroller is to help people have trust in government. And as we're entering this very turbulent time for the economy and by extension the budget, I think I'm trying to also play that role. And I'm trying to do communication about the budget and the economy that is clear and not political. And whether it's convenient or not for my career is not the point.
Right.
But I want people to understand it's their city, it's their budget, it's their economy, and it's confusing now, and for some people scary. And I'm trying to continue to play that role of just being a trusted communicator.
I appreciate every effort you make to do that. Speaking of communication, it was at your inauguration, City Comptroller. You're on the dais. Tish James, the Attorney General, by the way, doing it, the swearing in, loved it. I am honored in my lifetime to have been able to spend some time with our Attorney General. She's a remarkable human being. She swears. Here's you. I love that this is in your first 3 minutes. I know what you're all thinking. This is you. I know what you're all thinking. What the heck is a controller? And by the way, I listened to it. The biggest laugh, it's Tish. You can hear her laughing as you say that.
Awesome.
And you said it's excellent question. This job is about ensuring that people who have spent their lives working for the city can retire with dignity. It's about ensuring that our budget reflects our values, that our government inspires the trust of its people. You understand the consequences for working class families when they are excluded from our economic system. You then reference your history with the credit union. I'm curious, first off, it was a freezing day.
It was cold.
It was a miserable day outside. When people ask you about what this job is, what is it that's a great
Gosh,
framing.
who wrote that? That was pretty good.
That's pretty good. Whoever wrote that did a great job. But I'm just curious, how do you talk about what this job is? Because I feel like you're already trying to own it in maybe a different way than we've seen in the past.
Yeah, look, that framing and that speech, obviously I thought a lot about it, and I still feel that those are the important points. I start every day with the obligation to protect the pension funds for 750,000 people.
Yeah, that's number one.
Yes.
Non-negotiable. That's
totally.
Number one.
And look, it's a massive investment portfolio. It's approaching $1/3 of $1 trillion.
Yep.
And there's 750,000 people who work for the city, or also New York City Transit, or are retired from those jobs that are depending on me and us and my team. So that's why I put it first in that speech, and it's first on my mind every day. But this is the time of so little trust in government at every level. As we are entering this very difficult time for society and the economy. And the comptroller, because we have audit and oversight, investigation power over government, has a role to help build trust. And also because we have a team of economists and budget experts and so much more, we can be a source of information. And I'm really working to be that trusted source, as I mentioned. But I have focused a lot on the economy because I've said it 5 times already today. I've just concluded that we're entering into a period of enormous turbulence.
Absolutely.
Specifically for New York City's economy.
That's right.
And with huge implications for the workforce, for our budget, and I want to use the powers of my office to help the city navigate through that. And we have a long list of tools to help, some of which I mentioned, but we touch every aspect of government, right? We have we review and certify every contract. We issue the debt that funds building schools and parks and highways, and we enforce labor law, the prevailing wage. We obviously have oversight over the budget, and we manage the tort claims process when people sue the city. We touch everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a full view of what's happening
Mm-hmm.
right now. And I see signs for hope, and I see signs for concern.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have decisions to make by yesterday that are going to determine how New York City is going to come through this. And I'm determined to use my office to make sure that we steer through the uncertainty ahead and come out stronger.
Well, I want to acknowledge, before we go any further, I have to acknowledge one additional comment from the inauguration speech. We'll use the powers of oversight. The city keeps its promises. That it delivers the highest quality city services, that every nonprofit with a city contract actually gets paid on time. This is you quoting. Wow, very big applause line, because the crowd, literally went up with a roar. And then you literally turned and went, note that, Mr. Mayor, we got to work on that. We'll have to secure full funding. I can't help but express appreciation from the nonprofit space. Many of my friends, and I'm honored to have been part of the human services sector for now 30 years in New York City in one capacity or another. Your acknowledgement of what the human services sector, social services in New York City, our city safety net, is appreciated. In fact, I believe, if I read the headline correctly, when the city most recently was putting out something like, hey, we don't know if we can make these advances on contracts, then there was another headline that said there's a conversation happening between City Hall and Levine's office now to figure out what's going on. And I didn't hear any more besides that, except that after that, then I heard, well, the city pulled back on this. And then I heard lots of things at that point, like, oh, it's miscommunication. Oh, no, you don't. It's more to the story. You and I both know nonprofits typically are thrown under the bus.
Yes.
In every way imaginable in the city.
Look, at a time of so many challenges in New York and so much deep inequality.
Completely.
There's no solving those problems without human service nonprofits in the lead.
Absolutely.
Period. And they need the resources to do that. And it is a scandal that we contract with nonprofits who then go out there and provide meals to homebound seniors, or provide after-school programs to kids, or services to people struggling with substance use, and they pay salaries and rent and supplies, and then we don't reimburse them.
That's right.
And they wait a month and 6 months and sometimes years.
That's right.
And it's bringing many nonprofits to the brink of insolvency.
That's right.
And if we allow this to continue, we're all going to lose. I'm determined to help fix this. We actually took what I think is a small but important step forward in the last week or so, as we're recording, where we released a dashboard that now gives public visibility on every agency over every period of time, and many other ways to cut the data on how many contracts are registered after they begin, which is obviously, if you're not even registered before you start, you're definitely not getting paid on time.
That's right.
So that you could still, even after you get registered, face delays. And we are going to release future iterations of the dashboard that will also look at that. But my God, if you're not even registered, and Greg, we found that almost 90% of contracts are not registered by the time the work starts. So right off the bat, we're behind. And I believe that we found 40% are not even registered by a year in. Okay, so we have huge problems. This, by the way, is almost always not the comptroller's office problem. We are the only part of the cycle that has a time limit. We have a 30-day time limit. We get it done on average in 18 days. We try and do it even faster, for sure. Every day we shave off is a win, and we're working on that. But collectively, we have a big problem there, and I am absolutely determined to help solve this. I believe the mayor and his team are as well. In fact, I've had very good conversations with him and his senior leadership, so I'm optimistic. But it's going to require cutting through a lot of brick walls. There's major bureaucratic challenges here. I don't want to minimize it. It can be done. It has to be done. I'm all in on fixing this.
I want to highlight two things on the brick walls, or the complications that you've flagged. First and foremost, if folks listening, by the way, procurement is not everyone's favorite topic in the world, but let me tell you something. It is the thing that system that has been created over the course of time, our procurement systems need a lot of updating, reorganizing, rethinking, et cetera, to be able to make the contracting system work better. But here's the thing, 2 parts. One, I'm worried about the city's cash balance.
Yeah.
And here's why I bring this up. First of all, if you are a listener right now, you should check out New York by the Numbers, the monthly economic and fiscal outlook report.
Yeah.
I have the June 16th in my hand right now. As of May 29th, the cash balance for New York City's cash balance, $9.46 billion, compared to $12.34 billion at the same time last year.
Yeah.
In prior years, it stood at $9.55 billion, et cetera. I am worried about cash.
Yeah.
And as someone who's run an organization, I know at the end of the day, I can't pay people on promises. So my question becomes this, and we'll pivot to the sort of the low hire, low fire kind of space that we're in right now, because as an economy, that's where we are. But how much should we all be worried about what the cash balances are in New York City?
First, let me say that we have a newsletter that goes out every month that you can sign up for via email.
Get it.
That gives a monthly, basically cross-section of the key data.
That's right.
To help you understand our city's economy, our budget, our job market, our tourism sector, tax revenue where relevant, the real estate sector and all. And it's lots of visuals so that I think anyone, it's not designed for economists, it's designed for New Yorkers. So I encourage you to sign up.
That's right.
And this cash challenge is real. We have a natural rhythm, depending on when money comes in and where we spend it. And you said we had a cash balance of June of $9 billion, and your listeners might be like, "Well, that sounds great." Well, we're kind of at the peak,
right.
And because we just got a lot of tax income in the last couple of months, and we bottom out every year, last week of November, first week of December, and you want to be very careful. That is the big test. And we are projecting forward, and we're actually going to do a full projection in mid-July through December 31st. But I can say now that we know enough to be worried about that number as we look at it around late November, early December. And we don't want to have to resort to drastic measures like short-term borrowing. There's a lot of cost to that. It's definitely a red flag to our credit rating agencies, and we want to prevent that. And for a hot minute there, a couple weeks ago, it looked like nonprofits were going to pay the price for that.
That's right.
And that we were going to get out of the cash crunch by delaying a advance that had already been promised. And you can't do that 6 weeks out. When nonprofits plan a year ahead.
That's right.
And they had planned a year ago that there would be an advance arriving in July, and you just can't pull the rug out from under nonprofits like that. So we worked very, very hard with the administration to come up with a better solution, or at least a least bad solution that would hold nonprofits harmless. And we are recording on the day before the budget's due.
Yeah, we got to talk about that. Yeah.
So the actual plan we've come up with will not be public until the budget's out, but I can say that it will hold nonprofits harmless, and it'll be an accounting measure that I think, given the panoply of options, is probably the least of the bad choices. I don't want that to obscure the broader picture of a cash problem here. And we are in a cash problem, unfortunately, Greg, because we have a structural imbalance in New York City's budget. And the fact that we're having this conversation in an economy which is otherwise doing okay,
that's
where
right,
tax income is up, should make people wonder what the heck is going on. Right? It's one thing to have a cash crunch if you have a recession or the market is crashing, but we don't have those things right now. Our economy is growing, wages are growing on the whole. There's a lot of inequality, but
tremendous inequality.
But people at the bottom are struggling. But the economy as a whole, from a tax income perspective, is doing okay. The bottom line, Greg, is we've been spending more than we've been bringing in for a lot of years.
That is.
We have been covering it over by some opaque accounting measures and some one-shot tactics And just like with your family finances, eventually you start to feel it in the cash.
That's right.
And, we're passing a budget right now that, as we're recording, we don't know the final details yet. But I think under any scenario, we know that we are going to be kicking a very large can into the following year.
There it is.
And, our estimate before the final passage was $8.8 billion. And, I don't know if it's going to go up or down at final passage, but it's going to be a very big number. And last year we closed the gap because Wall Street boomed. That's underappreciated. I hope that happens again next year, but I don't know if that's for certain. Last year we closed the gap because we got billions of help from Albany, and that I think is going to be harder because I think the state budget's going to be in a tougher place next year. Last year we closed the gap by using some one-shot measures. We refinanced the pension. You can only do that once. We can't do that next year. So I worry that we're headed into a tough year. And that's not that far off, right? The mayor's preliminary budget for the following fiscal year is due in November, right?
That's
so
right.
we're not that far off when you and I are going to be now talking about next year's budget. I'm all over this. I'm all in on it. And I think there are modest measures we can take that will protect vital services now, but they require some bravery, and this is what I'm working towards.
From your testimony on the executive budget, this is from the beginning of June. On one hand, just to reiterate these points, on one hand, our city's economy is strong today by most measures. On the other hand, we're heading into a period of greater economic uncertainty than any other time in recent memory. On one hand, the stock market is near an all-time high. On the other hand, private sector job creation in the city has essentially come to a halt. There's our low, higher, low first. On one hand, our budget is being bolstered by a significant increase in tax revenue. On the other hand, we face extremely large out-year deficits. How can all these things be true at once in a city that is talking now more than ever about affordability? Is what I think you are in the position of having to try to respond to, react to. This mayor is navigating his first budget. But as you have pointed out, we're going to get through this one. But then what's next? And I'm just wondering, as someone who's been in the budget process in all the ways that you have throughout the course of your career, what are these conversations like behind the scenes? Is there anything you can say about behind the curtain as the budget is being negotiated, how it is that choices get made about what folks are doing? And because inevitably someone's going to say, probably the Citizens Budget Commission, probably going to say something like, they're kicking the can down the road again.
Look, first, there are two economies in New York right now. If you have a lot of money in the stock market, you're doing very well. If you own your home right now, you're doing very well because home prices are going up. But for people who are trying to break into the job market, it's very hard. For people who are trying to get their first apartment or any apartment, it's very hard. Rents are going through the roof. And it is only exacerbating inequality, felt especially by young people who have done the right thing and gone out and gotten a good degree, and they come back and they can't find a home they can afford, and they can't break into the job market. I mean, those are the two halves of the affordability crisis. And look, I'm talking to policymakers all day about this in government, at the city and the state and the federal level, and in the world of advocacy. Look, the challenge is that there are no easy options that are pain-free.
That's right.
And so it's just about deciding we're going to make the right trade-offs. And I argue that we're going to have to make some now in the short term. We can be surgical and strategic now, in part by reining in some very fast-growing expense lines, or we're going to be faced with the need for drastic cuts in the future. And if you care like I do, and I know you do, Greg, about preserving essential services for people who are struggling in New York, people on the margins, then I think we need to be better stewards of the budget. Otherwise, if we really enter crisis, rich people are going to be fine. But people who rely on workforce development programs and after-school programs and public health programs and substance treatment programs are going to face cuts. And I don't want to see that happen. And that's why I'm fighting for a sustainable, compassionate budget today.
And as we start to wind down, we're going to solve all the AI problems as we wrap this up. But I just want to note for you as well, everybody who's listening, that monthly economic and fiscal outlook report that you talked about, it's going to say, I don't even have to look at the first page about job sector growth. I don't even have to look at it anymore because I already know the answer.
Yeah.
All the jobs are in healthcare and social assistance.
Correct. Yeah.
And that's also the first set of jobs that you can pull the rug out from under if they're associated with a nonprofit space.
Yeah, I mean, it's really even more specifically in home health care,
There it is.
which is
That's the
Medicaid
one.
driven.
That's right.
Where the state has made a policy decision to help people remain in their homes as opposed to having to go to institutions and to fund home health care aides to do that. Those are low-paying jobs.
Yep.
A lot don't pay much more than minimum wage. And it's not a substitute for the broader growth in the job market that we
That's right.
desperately need. And as you just said, if you look at private sector hiring, we are essentially flat in New York. I think we're now, because of the May numbers, we're at 6,000 net private sector jobs beyond healthcare so far in 2026, which is a paltry sum
That's
in
right.
a city
That's right.
of 8.5 million.
Yeah.
And no one I talk to thinks that the job engine's going to kick into high gear next month. So this is a major challenge for us, which AI is going to impact.
That's right.
And probably already is impacting. And we did this report to ask the question, like, what does AI mean for jobs in New York City and the economy more broadly and the city budget? But we focused a lot on jobs.
Yeah.
And the challenge, Greg, is that technology people don't agree with economists on this, and even economists don't agree with each other.
That's right.
Some economists who think it's going to create jobs, some who think it will destroy jobs. So we basically embrace that uncertainty, and we put out 5 scenarios.
Yep.
But we didn't hold back. We put a percentage likelihood to each.
Yep.
And people can look at this, and they range from scenarios which are very positive, where AI contributes to a growing stock market and a growing job market, which is to say that it creates more jobs than it eliminates. Although even in that case, there can be some challenges because the person who loses a job might not be the one who
That's right.
gains a job. But we also looked, Greg, at more dire scenarios where, in our worst scenario, the city would lose a net 250,000 jobs in a matter of months. And that's like what we went through in the pandemic.
That's exactly what that is.
Right.
That's
Now, in the
That's right.
pandemic,
That's right.
though, the federal government came in with a ton of money for supplemental job unemployment assistance.
That's right.
And people could get through it for that.
That's right.
Trump's not going to do that for us.
No.
Right. So we partly wanted to sound the alarm and say, we got to have a plan here. If that happens in New York City, we got to support these people.
That's right.
Not only with extra cash assistance, but job training.
That's right.
Right. We have to help people. And this is a huge need that we don't have a budget built for right now.
That's
We don't have an adequate reserve fund. We have almost no money in our rainy day fund. We have $2 billion in a city with a $125 billion budget. Like, that's not enough.
That's right.
If we have
That's right.
a market crash, if the AI bubble pops, or even if the economy is good but we lose a couple 100,000 jobs, we still got a problem that's not currently funded. So one of the conclusions we drew in this report is we got to start now building a reserve fund so that we can pay for those things if the crisis hits.
That's right.
If we have a lot of job loss or we need a lot of job training, and if we have a hit to our budget. You know, we sounded the alarm on that. I feel like we were heard in government, just based on my conversations with lawmakers in the city and state, and people inside city and state on the executive side. So I feel like we had an audience, but we haven't done the work yet.
Well, and the reality is, if you make a hard decision, there's a consequence if you're in an elected space. As we wrap up the report, AI and New York City's fiscal future, planning scenarios for an uncertain economy. By the way, anybody who's listening to this, if you're in the workforce development space, you've been talking about AI in every way imaginable. The scenarios, just to reiterate, AI empowered economy.
Yeah.
Okay. AI falls flat was another one of your scenarios.
Yep.
Job replacement, some would argue that's already in motion now. The AI productivity boon, which is the most optimistic of the 5 scenarios that you presented. And the last scenario is the AI shockwave, which you have talked about, which would be devastating.
Yes.
And to your point about, look, we have lots of ground that we haven't had the time to cover together today. I want to give you a shout out for the LGBTQIA plus guide you put out.
Thank you, man.
It is Pride Month. A shout out on the Pride Month. Two, I just wanted to note for you, I remember distinctly being on the community board when your proposal related to housing plan, your housing plans came out.
Oh, yes.
And you talked
Yeah,
about
yeah,
that and thinking about like every vacant space we can turn into housing.
Right, yeah.
I thought we could dig into that. That's a whole other. Or we could talk about the right to counsel. You're the nation's first, which you helped to have a hand in New York City. And I'm thrilled by that.
I'll have to come back for season 2.
We'll have season
And
2.
I'm happy to.
Last but not least, let me just hand you this picture right here. I found this online. I'm not even going to tell you what it is. I'm just going to say the date is 1997. If you could just describe who this is and what advice you would give to this person.
There's a young man in that picture who looks like a child. That would happen to be me 29 years ago. Wow, man, you're making me feel old looking at this. This is a picture.
Don't be ageist. We're all, it's experience.
Thank you, Greg.
It's success.
This is me at the opening or near the opening of the credit union that we spoke about here in this conversation. I wish I could tell that young man to be a little more zen about the ups and downs of life and the ups and downs of the city that I talked about. I now really believe that we are a juggernaut, and I would apply that to my own career and the success and setbacks that I face. And if there's young people out there, you are going to win some and lose some. It's true of campaigns. It's true of your career. And just like my loss of my first campaign ultimately propelled me forward. In fact, I never would be an elected official today if I hadn't run and lost twice. I want young people to see their own setbacks that way and have confidence that over time your talents will rise to the top.
Thank you for everything you've done to get New Yorkers in a place where they can rise. Lots more ahead for us. I look forward to part 2 of this conversation because I think we just scratched the surface, and I look forward to hearing more.
Thank you, Greg. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you so much.